What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's time to talk about the latest album, Human, from the rock band 3 Days Grace. It's their first with Matt Walsh, the singer from My Darkest Days, and of course their first without lead singer Adam Gontier, someone who is a very prominent songwriter in this band, wrote the majority of the tracks, so it's hard to think of someone else coming into the band and stepping into the spotlight. But I'm not going to be that guy that says Matt can't be the one to fill those shoes. Now, does he? No, not necessarily very well here on this record, but he's definitely got his moments where he shows promise. I have gripes, I have criticisms of this record, but there also are some positive moments. I think that tracks like Car Crash show off how catchy the rock side of them can be, while still getting across a theme that feels not necessarily fresh, but at the same time pretty creative. Car Crash is one of those tracks that kind of talks about this girl that he sees spiraling out of control in her life, and he kind of compares it and relates it to a car crash going off the rails and that sort of thing. And I thought that was one of the best songs on this record. But then you look at the other side of the spectrum and you see songs like So What and One Too Many, and they just feel like they would have been more at home on a My Darkest Day record. I mean, So What is probably the biggest offender here on this record, probably my least favorite overall if I had to single one out. So What just feels like that bro anthem that's just like, yeah, fuck it, so what, we're gonna do what we're gonna do, we're living crazy, and that sort of thing. Landmine is another one that kind of follows in that lyrical footstep, if you will. Speaking of just going full throttle and like, I'm an unpredictable person, and it's like a landmine going off, and that sort of thing, and I can't get into the stuff like that. But there are moments where they do it right. Painkiller was the first taste we got of this record, and of course with Matt Walsh as lead singer back in 2014, over a year ago now, and I thought that was a pretty catchy tune. It kind of grew on me with time, but I can't say that it's necessarily my favorite from 3 Days Grace. It felt like Matt was really trying to emulate Adam there on that song, and he does that a few times here on this record. He kind of mixes up his voice. I feel like some tracks he does it really well, like I Am Machine, Car Crash, Tell Me Why, which is one of the more emotive tracks on the album in my opinion, but then he kind of shifts to this more, I don't know how else to describe it other than kind of like a douchey vibe that he puts off like on So What, and even The End Is Not the Answer because it just feels so formulaic and contrived. Consistency is definitely a problem for me here on this record because there are songs that I'm really enjoying, like the ones I mentioned, and then there's the tracks that weigh it down. The track that everyone's talking about right now though is the title track, well, Human Race, Human Race. I think it's a little bit repetitive, but at the same time, it's a grower. You're gonna have to give it some time. I didn't hate it on my first listen, but I wasn't exactly into it. There's some synths on there, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing because they showed that they can pull that off on tracks like Nothing's Fair in Love and War, the dark synthesizers on that track, and on the closing track, The Real You, which I will get into those in just a minute. But Human Race just feels, even though it's a little bit repetitive, I think it's got a solid chorus on it that is gonna get stuck in your head, and the guitar solo on it is praiseworthy as well. I started getting into the track Nothing's Fair in Love and War also until we got to the chorus. I was really liking the dark instrumental that was going on. Everything sounded good. The guitars were kind of atmospheric almost, kind of this dark, brooding atmosphere, and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Then we get to the chorus, and it sounds like something else I've heard. What could it be? Black Dahlia by Hollywood Undead. It's kind of ironic that they both have an album coming out on the same day, and I'm noting this similarity here. The whole, it was your pain, it was your knife, it was my heart, it was my... That whole thing, I get it confused now because there's like 4 stanzas that just are 4 lines that kind of go back and forth there, and they just feel like they're interchangeable. Of course, Hollywood Undead rap it, but 3 Days Grace sing it, but they kind of sing it at the same pace. So it almost feels like they kind of ripped it straight from Swan songs, and it's not exactly a good thing for this track. I thought it was also noteworthy that they kind of closed out on some weak tunes. I mean, you've got One Too Many, The End Is Not the Answer, and then one that I'm kind of mixed on, The Real You, closing out this record with not a very solid 1, 2, 3 combo. The Real You I wanted to like, I will say that. It started off cool, it had those synths on it, but it just feels like it drags on. Before I go, I do want to mention a couple of tracks that I really did enjoy. I mentioned, I think, the titles of those. Car Crash probably being my overall favorite, along with Tell Me Why. Tell Me Why I did say was a little bit more emotive as a track, and I feel like that's just because Matt Walsh's personality, he really lets himself go. His vocals get the spotlight here, and it's got a nice backing guitar and instrumental just as a whole on the track. I thought that was a pretty solid track. I Am Machine as well is one that just talks about like doing the same thing over and over again, not exactly feeling human. He's saying like, here's to being human, but at the same time he doesn't feel like that. He feels like a robot. So I thought that was a pretty creative track, not necessarily anything spectacular or mind-blowing, but for the new 3 Days Grace sound, I thought it was probably one of the best songs on the album. Overall, not that impressed, but at the same time, some of these tracks are just meh to me, and I don't really feel too strongly about them one way or the other. Nothing on here is offensively bad, I wouldn't say, maybe other than So What probably being my least favorite, and One Too Many is definitely a skippable as well. For me, this album is a 3 out of 5. So if you've heard Human, the latest album from rock band 3 Days Grace, let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. You guys know I have enjoyed the majority of their discography up to this point. Transit of Venus is one that didn't really grip me with time. If I had to go back and re-rate that one, I would probably say like a 3 for that one as well, 3 to 3.5. A 1X, self-titled, Life Starts Now, still hold up relatively well, 1X being my overall favorite from them. So let me know maybe your favorite album in the comment section down below. While you're there, smash the like button on this review and subscribe to the channel if you would like to see more of my content. Let me know what other albums I should tackle in the coming weeks. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you very soon right here on ARTV.